stands alone for a reason. The 125th edition of Army-Navy. From Northwest Stadium in Landover, Maryland, the Commander-in-Chief's trophy is on the line. It's the most combined wins entering this rivalry game ever. 19-4, and both are bowl-bound. We are counting you down to kickoff for America's game between Army and Navy. Danny Cannell, Emily Proud. Our pregame show is brought to you by Navy Federal Credit Union. Our members are the mission, a fitting sponsor for this show. And Danny, I laid out just how good these teams are, but why is this a big game every year?
It's really, really special. It just stands apart, Emily. I've gotten to go to this game a few times, and, you know, probably if you would have asked me this question 10 years ago, I would have talked about it like it was a big deal, but you don't truly appreciate it until you've been there and you've seen the march on before the game. You've seen some of the dignitaries that are there from, from our armed forces. You know, you look over, it's a 4-star general. There's an admiral over there. They're just everywhere you look. And then you see the young men and women that represent our country. And I don't mean to be corny or sappy, but when you get to meet them, I've got to talk to some of the players over the years, you just feel better about the future of our country. You know, you really do. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah. Yes, you do. I mean, they're so impressive, and the sacrifices that they make, of course, they're putting on the lives on the line, you know, for us as Americans and our freedom. But from a football player standpoint, they do so much more. And I thought I was busy as a two-sport athlete at Florida State, but the commitment of what they have to do for training and to, in the summers, they're going to serve overseas when, most people are looking, where are you going on spring break? It's just an entirely different mindset. And the most rivalries, I guess you would describe as a hatred towards another. There really is like a general hatred. Like, yes, they're all in the same country, but no, they hate each other too. Like, they want to talk trash and they want to win this game more than anything. And you talk to these players. Yeah, I remember working an Air Force game, and they would go through their schedule for the day, and they're like, oh, here's 45 minutes for football because you have so much else you have on your plate. So this game is special no matter the year. But man, this year feels so exciting. Both teams started 6-0 in the same season for the first time since 1926, which was a long time ago. But let's talk about Army, because they're seeking a program record 12th win. What do you credit all their success to this year? I mean, I think obviously it starts with the job Coach Monken has done. I mean, he's been there for a long time, but he has been built a consistent winner and a mindset that just exudes confidence. They're one of the more disciplined teams in the country, which you would expect. So then it's like, okay, you've built this culture, and then you put a pretty special quarterback in Bryson Daly, who has run this option system close to perfection. Ashton Genty is going to get a lot of publicity for what he's accomplished over the season and is a Heisman Trophy finalist. But if you look who's up there tied with the most rushing touchdowns on the season with 29, Bryson Daly is right there. He orchestrates this offense, makes great decisions with the football. He can throw it a little bit too, which is something that both of these teams have done more so in the last couple years. But it all starts with the man at the top, and Coach Monken has done a phenomenal job building a juggernaut at Army.
I know you would agree with this statement, and that the quarterback is the most important position to any football team, but how much more important is Bryson Daly than just your average quarterback to a football team?
We use that term dual threat a lot for quarterbacks. That's not, Bryson Daly's like a triple threat, because of what he does. I mean, he really is a running back that is back there that can do just as much damage as some of the best running backs in the country. He's not an elite passer, but he clearly can make the throws that he needs to make. And I think it really starts with the leadership too. It takes a unique personality to step up and lead a bunch of alpha males, which is what you have when you're at Army in the first place. But then you get guys to follow you and want to play for you, and you play behind one of the best offensive lines in the country. That's the recipe for a special, potentially historic season for Army.
I mean, their offensive coordinator, Cody Worley, was working with quarterbacks before this, but was officially promoted this year. Are you seeing anything different with the way that he's calling the offense with Bryson Daly Daly? Because he was a starter last year and did not put up these crazy numbers.
No, exactly. Yeah, I think they've been more aggressive in their style of play, taking more shots down the field and also working some of the underneath pass game. I mean, it was 5 years ago you would watch an Army game and it didn't matter what the down and distance was. They might throw it 2 or 3 times a game. That was it. Now they're not exactly, you're not going to confuse them with an air raid offense, but they are willing to stretch the field vertically more than ever before. And Bryson Daly has shown the arm strength to be able to hurt you in there and the accuracy to hurt you on the underneath game as well. And there is a creativity with this offense. When you've got a quarterback like this, they'll call some quarterback draw play action style of offense, which is really almost impossible to defend. But I tell you, Navy today, and this really goes for both of these teams, you better make sure that you tackle your assignment and not the ball. Because if you think you try to chase the ball, it is so hard to keep up with. If your assignment is the quarterback, tackle the quarterback. If it's the B-back, tackle the B-back. If it's an A-back, you tackle that person. And a lot of times when you're prepping for these offenses, you will actually practice against error without a football to make sure you are that dialed in just to your assignment, because there's a lot of deception involved, ball handling, who has it, quarterbacks reading. You just have to make sure you're attuned to your assignment.
It's very nice of you to give Navy some advice for how to take down a guy like Bryson Daly, or just this rushing offense in general that leads the country in yards per game, second in rushing touchdowns, which is what we're used to seeing from an Army team. I want to go back to a comparison you made with Ashton Jeanty. I mean, they were tied for 29 rushing touchdowns at the top. Obviously, Bryson Daly not getting that Heisman conversation, but when I think of Ashton Jeanty, I think of a guy that's hard to take down.
Yeah.
What is it about Bryson Daly's running style and his ability to break away from defenders that makes him a prolific rusher?
He is so, normally when quarterbacks run the football, Emily, you try to avoid contact. Yes. This is not Bryson Daly.
No,
he is not afraid to initiate contact and even to dole out some punishment. Again, it's a very unique circumstance because most quarterbacks, they're the face of your franchise. You want to be able to throw the football, so you're constantly protecting yourself. He's like a bowling ball. When he gets going, it takes 3 to 4 guys. Another unique aspect to be the quarterback position. Usually they're a little bit more lighter and they don't have sort of the muscle pound for pound type of runner that Bryson Daly is. So I think that's one thing clearly that stands out, is his ability to dole out punishment, to run aggressively, and he's not running away from contact. No. You will not see him run out of bounds, protect himself from a hit, and he'll carry it 30 plus times in a game. He takes a pounding, and yet he keeps coming up and goes right back at you.
And I can see him slide.
No.
You see him initiate that contact, and it's clearly been working for him this season. We have to hit a bit of breaking news as it pertains to Army here. Per multiple reports, it sounds like Marshall is pulling out of their bowl game. The Thundering Herd cites not having enough players. They lost more than 25 to the transfer portal already, which is their reason to pull out of that December 28th game. Per also the reports, the NCAA is gauging 5 and 7 teams for the best prospect to replace Marshall in this bowl game. So Army has their competitor for today, but they don't know what happens next. What do you think about this news?
This is a byproduct of a calendar that is broken in college football. Yeah. So Charles Huff, who was the coach at Marshall, has taken the job at Southern Miss. So he's moved on, and a lot of players are like, wait a second, we might either want to go play for Charles Huff or we want to play somewhere else because this isn't what we signed up for. And this is really becoming an epidemic. We all talk about the portal and how many players are entering into it. We've seen exoduses before, but to this magnitude where it felt like it was the entire team at Marshall was saying, we're all leaving because we didn't want our coach to leave. It's a calendar that needs to be fixed, where I think it should be the same for everybody. Coaches should not be able to take new jobs, and players should not be able to enter the portal until the last game of the season. And not just the last game of the regular season, the last game of bowl season and playoffs, so that there is some continuity, or else this is going to happen a lot more. In the NFL, free agency doesn't open until after the season, right? The draft is after the season. The fact that we have a signing day that takes place the week of the championship game and the portal opens before bowl season, it sets you up for these types of circumstances. So my hope, and I hate this for the participants in this bowl and Armies, they're supposed to play somebody.
Who earned it.
Right.
As well.
I hate it for them, but what I hope comes from this as a real serious look at changing some of the dates that we have on the calendar that makes zero sense.
Yeah, well, sometimes people try to blame the college football playoff and making the bowl games not as important. These are not bowl opt-outs. These are transfers.
Right.
They're no longer on the team, which makes sense considering they also lost their head coach. So it's a little backwards,
yeah.
like we've talked about. But we're going to continue to break down the game we know is happening, which is between Army and Navy on CBS. And you have to imagine that slowing down Bryson Daly is priority number 1, 2, and 3 for Navy. But we'll tell you why the Middies need to put the focus on themselves if they want to lift the Commander-in-Chief's trophy.
The special thing about the Army-Navy game, it's like the culmination of your whole season.
No matter the record, no matter who has a higher ranking, anything like that just goes out the window.
Doesn't matter what you did before, it only matters what you're going to do during the game.
It's going to be a battle. It always is.
They're ranked, we're not. It's in home territory, right, down in D.C.
It's setting yourself up to be maybe the biggest Army-Navy football game in a long time.
It's a great rivalry. We have two service academies whose purpose is bigger than just football.
At the end of the day, we're all on the same team. We're all fighting the same battle.
We have the chance to play for America while these other teams don't.
Go Army, beat Navy.
Go Navy, beat Army.
We are continuing to count you down to kickoff between Army and Navy. We talked a lot of Army in that first block, so let's turn the attention to the midshipmen, and it's really been a tale of two seasons for them. They started the year 6-0 for the first time since the 70s, but since then are 2-3. In your opinion, what do you attribute this change to?
The schedule got tougher,
yes.
right? And I do think the Notre Dame loss, so Blake Horvath, the quarterback for Navy, was playing. I give him a ton of credit for trying to play through a thumb injury that was on his throwing hand, and he turned it over several times. And there were 6 turnovers in the game. 3 or 4 of them pretty much gave Notre Dame points, like pick 6, scooping scores where you're just gifting them points. And then I do feel, Emily, there was a little bit of a hangover effect. They lost the very next week in a game they were supposed to win against Rice, but it just felt like that devastation of the, getting blown out by Notre Dame hurt them. And then against Tulane, that game was probably the one that hurts the most because you got shut out. You still did turn it over twice, so that was an issue. And I do think Tulane is that, one of the teams, obviously, that's at the top of the American, but I still think that was uncharacteristic, the fact that they, lost that game the way they did. Now, Horvath was banged up in that one, too, and missed his last game against East Carolina, so you haven't had him the entire season. So I would say injuries and turnovers are the biggest reason why the season didn't finish as strong as it started.
So Horvath seems to be good to go. I mean, nobody's playing 100% at this point in the season. But how do they recapture some of that magic in the first half? You mentioned that a lot of it was because of the competition that they were playing, but they had a big win against Memphis in the first half, and they've been playing well. But I'm more concerned about the offense.
Right. I think
how do they get that going?
So I think a lot of it does have to do with Blake Horvath's health. So they held him out that last game to get him healthy for this game. And I actually spoke with him earlier this week, and he was talking about how this is the reason why he rested, was he wanted to be able to go in this game. And this is one where you put your body on the line. You don't care how sore you are, what little nicks and injuries you've had all season long. But I do think it starts with him. The quarterback, especially in both of these option-heavy offenses, has to make the right decision with the football. He's got to make sure he doesn't turn it over. And that's, again, something they've struggled with. Ball handling becomes such an important part. I think people think, oh, it's your throwing hand. It also becomes your pitch hand. It becomes, a lot of times, your thumb can get in there on a handoff where if it's hurting you, you might hand the ball off a little awkwardly. They have to make sure they carry the football and do not turn it over. And I think the start of this game is really big. It always is for an underdog in any game, but I do think Navy needs to get some stops on defense, and the offense needs to sustain some first downs. They don't have to go up and score, but they need to get a couple first downs, take some time off the clock, build some confidence slowly in your ability to get the ball moving at least somewhat.
You mentioned he fits well in this option offense, but this isn't your mama's option offense, right? We've got a new offensive coordinator with Drew Cronick bringing in his hybrid wing T. What is it about Blake Horvath that fits so well in what Navy's doing offensively this year?
So I think it's interesting because his passing yardage total is almost double of what Bryson Daly is, but it's still under 100 yards passing, and it really does put some pressure on the defenses, the way the ball handling works when you do not have any idea where the ball is going, and they are not afraid to pull up and pass the ball out of the shotgun. That's probably the thing that is probably more surprising to a lot of people. If you're used to seeing a lot of these option-style offenses, quarterbacks under center, they actually have some run and pass game out of the shotgun, which I think allows you to see the field a little bit better as a quarterback, and that clearly has benefited Blake Horvath in the pass game as well. So I think it's a little bit of the unique, and some of the motions that they do as well to give you a little bit of a bead of what you're doing and being able to know what coverages are coming.
Yeah, there was that fun stat for the first 6 games. He was the first player since Jalen Hurts with 600-plus pass yards and 600-plus rushing. So when you're compared to that, that's pretty good. But it's time now for Mission Success, brought to you by Navy Federal Credit Union. Our members are the mission. What is the key to success for both of these teams in this game?
So for Army, I think it's imperative they get the 1-2 punch going, not just Bryson Daly, but Kanye Udo, their B-back. He's their other 1,000-yard rusher. They've got to get him going in this offense as well, because I think Navy is going to be hyper-focused on shutting down Daly, which should open up the door for Udo. So they have to get him going. For Navy, it comes down to one thing for me. They need to keep it clean in the turnover column. It has been their bugaboo late in the season. They cannot put the ball on the ground. They cannot throw interceptions. They have to protect the football. If Navy does that, they will be right there in the fourth quarter where they need to be, which is probably a lower scoring one-possession game. So that's my key for Navy as well.
All right, see what happens in this game, and we're going to talk more Army-Navy coming up after this, and we have to discuss these uniforms, Danny.
Yeah, these are fire.
They are looking good. Every year, it's absolute fire, but this year, the meaning behind these uniforms, so special. little over half an hour from kick between Army and Navy, and I want to tell you more about what they'll be wearing. Army's jerseys this year will honor the soldiers of the 101st Airborne Division. Rendezvous with Destiny is the motto the Screaming Eagles lived by nearly 80 years ago. As for Navy, they'll sport a pirate-themed uniform with skull and crossbones to pay homage to the Jolly Rogers Squadron, whose tagline was "Fear the Bones." Here's Joe Musso with more on the significance of this one.
A single emotion cannot capture what this day means. For these men, the intersection of all they hold true, the Army-Navy game, is more than one.
Football's greatest classic, the Army-Navy game. One of the great spectacles in American sport.
A game that feels like a bowl game, a rivalry, and a holiday.
If that doesn't give you chills, you're never going to get it.
It is a lifetime lived in 4 quarters, where preparation and execution collide. This matchup forever highlighted by unrelenting competitive spirit. Never more competitive than this. 19 combined wins entering the most in the history of the nation's rivalry.
American football champions, the Army Black Knights.
And as the very landscape of the sport shifts, the spirit of this game, steadfast in excellence. The best among us, offering everything they have, not for self, but for country.
It's the only game where everyone playing is willing to die for everyone watching. Go Army, be Navy! Go Navy, be Army!
Duty, honor, country.
Men with will of granite, etching their names into this 125th edition. It's Army versus Navy, unlike anything else.
America's game live from Landover, Maryland. Kickoff is set for the top of the hour. You can watch at 3 o'clock on CBS and streaming on Paramount+.
with the support of the NFL, a new playbook is being written, one where we all play for the same team. Across 27 cities, the National Gay Flag Football League provides inclusive play for over 4,000 LGBTQ+ players and allies. Under these lights, walk-ons are welcome.
The world of sports never sleeps, and neither do we. Welcome to CBS Sports HQ Morning Buzz, Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. You can catch up on the latest storylines and highlights with expert analysis to get you dialed in. So grab your coffee and kickstart your day off right with Morning Buzz only on CBS Sports HQ.
Your sports news all the time.
We've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you.
Big news coming out of the NFL. A lot of movement in the rankings this week.
With highlights.
What a finish at the final round of play.
And in-depth analysis.
Can they three-peat? Tony Romo joins the conversation.
What can you say about this game?
When you need your sports in a snap.
We're bringing you that breaking news right here on HQ.
Find it on CBS Sports HQ. Streaming free anywhere you are.
3, 2, 1, let's go.
Ashley, did you know We Need to Talk is going into its 10th season, and we are bringing a digital show every single week.
So we're going to highlight women in sports, whether you're playing, whether you're commentating, whether you're working behind the scenes. I'm looking forward to us having the platform to lead the charge in that.
I'm so excited to talk with you every single week on We Need to Talk now.
Because everyone's in for a treat. It's going to be fun.
This just in, before Army and Navy, it was the Indy Classic between number 17 ranked Texas A&M and number 11 Purdue. The Aggies fought in a tight one but came away with the 70-66 win in Indianapolis. Texas A&M's first non-conference win over a top 15 team since 2017. Let's welcome in two guys on the call in this one, Bill Raftery and Jay Wright. And guys, we expected a tight game and we got it. So how was Texas A&M able to come away with the win in the end, Jay?
Emily, it was a great game here, outstanding atmosphere, but Texas A&M did what they do. The Aggies turn you over, the Aggies beat you on the glass, they get to the foul line, but what was a little unique was they hit 9 threes today and shot the ball pretty well.
It was painful to watch the game with Jay because they didn't take enough threes for him, but the defense on both sides, I think you'd have to agree. I can't get over how tenacious A&M is, though.
They are. We were talking, Emily, about Purdue being probably one of the best offensive teams in the country, and Texas A&M took them out of what they did, and Trey Kaufman-Renn, the leading scorer, had to work for everything he got today.
And one other question for you, Jay, Emily, you couldn't have run more things if you're Purdue, but the reaction of A&M is just on top of their game.
Emily, we were sitting here coming out of every timeout saying Matt Painter made an adjustment again, trying to get Trey Kaufman-Renn the ball, trying to get Braden Smith or Lawyer open. He changed everything, tried to feed from the top, ball screen, staggered screen, everything. And Texas A&M had an answer for everything.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't see a ton of runs in this one, which of course makes for some fun basketball. You mentioned the adjustments that Matt Painter made, but what sparked A&M's ability to pull away a bit in this second half? Bill?
I would say a deep bench.
Yeah.
And the way they get after you, they even if they don't turn you over, they force you into a bad shot late in the shot clock. On the offensive end, they keep it alive, tip it out. They get more opportunities than most people. I mentioned during the broadcast, a little bit like Houston and Kelvin.
Yeah.
You know, they go and chase it if it's a bad shot, so they really shoot 50% on a trip, basically.
Yeah. Yes. And Pharrell Payne, Emily, Pharrell Payne came off the bench, 16 points, 9 rebounds. He was a force inside and really gave Purdue's bigs trouble, especially Trey Kaufman-Renn, fouled him out of the game.
A&M now 3-0 against ranked opponents this season. But if we look big picture, guys, at the SEC in general, having a fantastic start to the college basketball season. Jay, what makes this conference so good?
it's depth now. You've over the years, and Mike Tranghese years ago was brought in as an advisor, and all the coaches that they've brought into the SEC are outstanding now. And you've got total commitment from all of those schools at the same level they have for football now they have for basketball. Facilities, their coaches, their commitment to NIL. So you've got outstanding talent, you've got outstanding coaches, and now they're playing against each other. When this SEC season starts, wow, we're in for a great season of college basketball.
It's almost reminiscent of the old Big East when they got 11 teams in. You might see that. That's how deep and talented this conference happens to be.
Yeah, we'll see the number one team in the nation, Tennessee, on display tonight. But another big win for Texas A&M and Buzz Williams. Thank you guys so much for the great breakdown. This is also a big reason that Texas A&M had success on this game. Their big three on Saturday against Purdue was dominant. 47 points, shooting 53% from the field. And although Bill was joking with Jay, there are not enough threes, still 5 of 11 from the big three for Texas A&M. Officially 6 days away from the college football playoff kicking off. This time next week, we'll be watching game 1 of a triple header. You know, we're excited here. Mackenzie Brooks, Danny Cannell. Mackenzie's going to walk us through what Sportsline thinks is going to happen, so we don't even need to watch the games,
yeah,
right?
I have it all, guys. And not to flex, but we crushed the NBA Finals, the first round of those. We crushed March Madness, had Alabama going to the Final Four. So when you start to get mad at me, when you see these numbers, just remember the credible record here, okay? We're going to start in the first round. Now, as far as Ohio State, Tennessee, we do have Ohio State winning. This should be a far closer game than odds makers are implying to me. If we were to have a betting bracket, I would probably have Tennessee winning. But as far as the simulation, a greater than 50% chance for Ohio State to win that game in the cold there. Again, Tennessee, I do love their ground game, but we love Ohio State's ground game as well. Now, this Texas-Clemson one, I know people find a little controversial. If your name, like Texas can beat any team that's not Georgia, to me, right? I think that their ceiling's high. I just don't think we've seen it all yet. Penn State, SMU. Listen, James Franklin can beat any team ranked below him. We know that. We know that record. So it's pretty simple math there when it comes to SMU. I'm a big SMU girl. Don't get it twisted. They are one of my playoff darlings. But we see Kevin Jennings, a little bit of fumbling issues coming down the stretch of the season. Now, Notre Dame, Indiana. We love Notre Dame because of that three-headed, essentially, rushing monster with Leonard, with Price, with Love. And I know Indiana, quote unquote, has some great run D numbers. You know my feelings about that. Against who? Against who? So then we move on to the second round. And
I want to address a couple things here, all right? Yes, before we get moving too far. One, I'm kind of surprised you have every game that the favorites covering, which I was pretty interested by. So they're pretty, I hope the games are closer.
Well, Ohio State, now, Ohio State's like they're a touchdown favorite, which I think is a little crazy.
The only thing I will say about Indiana is they did hold Ohio State's offense in check. That defense did a pretty good job. And SMU, this one, I think I agree with the score, but I think SMU is a backdoor cover type situation because of what they can do playmaking wise. I think their defense could struggle against Penn State's Katron Allen, Nick Singleton.
I will be curious to see what the SMU team total is there. Because
do you ever pick upsets?
Yes, let's get there, Danny. Okay. Let's get there. We'll start down here with my own Georgia Bulldogs. This shows my professionalism, okay? No SEC bias in the model, Danny. Okay, we have Georgia losing to Notre Dame. Unless your name is Texas, you can run on this Georgia team. They allowed 500 yards combined to UMass and Georgia Tech. I'm not here to be blind to that. So, again, I talk about that three-headed monster.
Is that with or without Carson Beck, or it doesn't matter?
It's like a 50-50 right now. So definitely downgraded, not completely out of this game yet. But I'd still love my boy Gunner here. But we still have him losing, so take that for what you will. So again,
love him, but no.
This is a team you can run on. Unless your name is Texas, you can run on this Georgia team, and that's just really how it is. Oregon, Ohio State, we make a super, super close game. Now, after that Big Ten championship that we were at, we have the ability to update players' clutch gene, essentially, right? And seeing Dylan Gabriel play the way he did, I like him to edge out Will Howard. Will Howard, to me, is maybe one of the bottom quarterbacks in the playoff right now. I'm curious to see if you have an argument against that.
He did 2 interceptions against Michigan. He had the pick six against Penn State, which, again, I know the game they still won. He's got to play better. The good news, if you're an Ohio State fan, he actually played pretty good against Oregon the first matchup, but the result was the same, a 1-point loss.
Right.
He's going to have to play much bigger and better if they want to upset Oregon.
And that banged up offensive line, and I will make adjustments as we know if they're healthy or not through the playoff. But we move down to Arizona State, Texas here. It could have been any Big 12 team. I talked about this in conference championship weekends. Scatterbo is really their only option, right? And Texas will be able to stop that. Maybe Iowa State wasn't able to, but I'll be damned if Texas can't take care of a one-dimensional offense here. Then we go to Boise State, Penn State. I know they're the 3 seed, but as far as rankings, still ranked lower than Penn State.
You have 3 of the 4 teams with byes losing in their opening game.
Oh, just wait till the full circle moment.
The byes are messed up.
Should we fix this?
Well, wait till the full circle moment, and I don't want to skip ahead here, but we start to get the 5 seed, the 6 seed, the 10 seed. That's our upset with Notre Dame beating Georgia. And oh, look what it is. The 5 seed versus the 6 seed in the national championship game, because the 5 and 6 seeds are more favorable spots. We do have Texas beating Penn State here, finally, because James Franklin is playing a team ranked higher than him, and we do know how that story ends. We don't have to put data into that situation. You see Texas essentially tied with the shortest odds to win the national championship. So it's not just us thinking that. It's us, odds makers, recognizing this pretty old 1 seed is not doing much for you when you're playing the winner of Ohio State, Tennessee, in essentially a pick-em situation in a neutral field. They love this path for Texas. They love this path for Penn State. The losers of the big, powerful conferences were the winners of conference championship weekend. Puts them out right here at the end of the road.
I would not be shocked to see Penn State there. I would be shocked to see Texas there. I still think Oregon is the most complete team in the country, but they're also getting very, very trendy. Like, I've noticed a lot of people. I was on board from the preseason. I was on from since day one, Mackenzie, so that won't be a surprise to me. But I do think Texas, we've talked about all the teams that have played against good teams. Like, I think they will take care of a lesser talented team.
Sure.
When they stack up against Oregon, that talent level will be very equal. Yeah. That's where I think Quinn Ewers needs to step up. And the only other times we've seen them against equal talent is twice against Georgia, where they came up short.
And it's interesting because a model, is looking at everybody's data points, right? It's not about your brand name or anything. This is probably the best team in college football inside the 20s, right? It's just executing in the red zone. And the model has this idea of, okay, regression to the mean is actually scoring touchdowns and probably figuring that out by late January that you're able to do so. So we have a very high optimistic opinion of Texas. Same with Penn State as well. There's a few teams that the model just loves off the get-go. Penn State was our favorite value team to make the playoffs at the beginning of the year. Always love SMU. But Texas, one of those teams, they're so highly ranked in everything inside the 20s. It's just about executing, which we think they can probably figure out come the time.
That's what Arch Manning's for, right?
Yeah, exactly. Does the model take in how tight it could be for Ryan Day? Because that is going to be a stressful environment that they will be in. Again,
Vegas is not taking that into consideration.
No, they're over a touchdown favorite.
Yeah.
Yes. My problem with the Vegas and everything right now is talking about this cold weather, like how much of an impact. Ohio State, nobody's used to playing in that cold of weather this late in the year. All of these Big Ten schools and everything, like their regular season's done by Thanksgiving. Nobody's playing in like these aren't Ohio boys.
It also isn't a traditional Tennessee team. They bring a run game and a defense.
That is true.
That's and just I'm saying, like Ohio State is not full of all of these like northern guys necessarily.
But you live in it. So when you're in Columbus, your blood is getting acclimated to it.
Yeah.
All I know is when I watched Tennessee play in Athens and it was 55 degrees, I saw a bunch of receivers and running backs complaining about the heated bench, like they wanted the bench turned on. They better get that mentality out of their system and be ready for some cold weather. That's what I think a lot of it comes mentally, like a mental challenge. That's why I love when I see teams warming up the team, and it's crazy. I never did this, but the team with the guys with their shirts off and like it's 10 below and they're like, who cares? I love that mental aspect of we don't care what the temperature is, we're here to play football. So that's something that Josh Heupel's going to have to address.
And this SMU Penn State game, now Drew Aller is somebody who did grow up in the cold in Ohio, so he is used to a situation like that. Curious to see how this Mustangs team fares in Happy Valley.
I will say some boots on the ground coverage. It was snowing in Knoxville, Tennessee this week, so maybe the guys are getting some experience in that cold.
Just standing out there like
30. Exactly. They're getting ready for these cold weather games, as are we. I'm so excited for the playoff. It is coming up soon. Thank you both so much. And speaking of the playoff, there are a few teams, Chip Patterson, who would like to see their names in the college football playoff bracket next year, and it seems like a theme of this offseason is changing college football into this NFL model. Of course, our friend Bill Belichick is somebody to thank for that discussion. So overall, looking at this change in how we run college football programs, bringing in general managers, working with NIL and salary cap experts, how do you think it's going to work?
I think that it is going to have a lot of situations that do not work out as well as you think, because some of these programs that have been on the forefront of really doing, 1-year rentals, 2-year rentals, trying to construct a roster by just doing a lot of transfer portal all at once, it does seem like there is a high floor, but it is also a situation where accomplishing your ceiling can be very difficult. Let's look at the example of the Louisville Cardinals last year, year one with Jeff Brom. They make it all the way to the ACC championship game with one of the biggest portal classes, in all of college football. Then they have to go back and reload again. And this year was a little bit of a disappointment, just 8-4. How about Ole Miss, another team that under Lane Kiffin has been on the forefront of the portal and NIL era, constructing their roster like a salary cap, allotting more money this year to that defensive line. What did we see? Ole Miss got great defensive results, one of the best defenses in the SEC, but ultimately this was a team that lost to Kentucky. Ultimately, this was a team that fell short of the SEC championship. And so when you're going with the pro model, the thing that I'm seeing a lot is that it does raise your floor. You are not going to have a team that is just at the bottom of a power conference when you are spending, when you are constructing so intentionally. But I do think that ceiling, contending for championships, is where you need to be able to do not just an all-pro model. You need to be able to have some of that college influence as well, because because that's what we see at Oregon. You know, that's what we see at Georgia. The fact that you've been recruiting at a high level, you've been developing, you've got a core of your team that understands the expectations, and those guys, they're able to help with those transfer portal additions to make one of the best rosters in the country. So I would say that my number one expectation as more teams continue to adopt a more professionalized model is that you probably are not going to have a 4-8 type season if you are spending, if you are investing. But I do think that if you want those 11-win seasons, if you want that championship contention, you do need to be able to have players that are in your locker room on your campus for 2 to 3 years so that they can set the standard for everybody else in the building.
So, Chip, what would your advice be to Chapel Bill? And yes, a guy with 6 Super Bowl rings needs Chip Patterson's advice when it comes to the college game. What is your advice when it comes to balancing that college sprinkling in those elements while also running that NFL model? So it's not just a matter of having more than 4 wins, but getting in that college football playoff bracket.
I would tell him don't think that you're going to be able to communicate the message all by yourself. You know, when you're going out there and when Michael Lombardi, the general manager, and the rest of the personnel staff is trying to put together the pieces, these are not going to be pros that are going to come in and just be ready and understanding to take your teaching. Because I do think, Emily, Bill Belichick is going to provide a week-to-week advantage when it comes to getting his team prepared for what they are going to face. I mean, that guy that loves football might not love people. So he's not going to be the person who's going to be going to grandma's house to be able to lock down a signee, but he still needs to have an understanding of how you can get some real leadership on that team, because if you go on a year-by-year basis, things could get fractured when you hit adversity, and you absolutely will hit adversity. So my advantage to Bill Belichick, when you're starting to go to the transfer portal, when you're trying to identify the players that are going to come in, try to find players where you've got some reports from their former coaches, from former teammates, from people around the personnel industry of what they can be in the locker room. So, for example, Emily, when I'm thinking about the quarterback that they're going to go try to procure, I expect from the transfer portal, make sure you've got yourself an alpha. Make sure you've got somebody who can really rally a group around them, because you know who has that right now? The Oregon Ducks. Dylan Gabriel's ability to step right into that locker room and be a real leader and get everyone to rally around that offense, I think it's been something that's been really impressive. I mean, Emily, we got to hear from him in Ann Arbor. You could just tell the way that he has been able to take on that leadership role. I think that that's why the intangibles are probably just as important as the raw tools when it comes to some of these portal additions.
Give me some names. Quarterbacks are starting to come off the board in the transfer portal, but the top 3 guys are still available. Maybe somebody that's not in the portal yet. What do you think?
I think that North Carolina should be hunting every team when they get bounced from the playoff, because once you get knocked out of the playoff, a new portal window will start. And I think that's where you're going to have maybe not grabbing someone starter, but maybe grabbing someone in the room. You know, I'm thinking about Notre Dame has a loaded quarterback room right now. Penn State has some good backups behind Drew Aller. Ohio State has tons of blue chip players. I would say that Oregon as well. Remember, Dante Moore is still there if the Ducks decide that they're going to try to go to somewhere else. But ultimately, come on now. There's one place, and we'll see, because I know McKenzie's got Texas going all the way to the championship game. You might have to wait till late, but if the Texas Longhorns have an earlier than expected exit against the Clemson Tigers, I do think Quinn Ewers would be worth a call. My expectation is that Steve Sarkisian and the Longhorns offensive staff has committed to going to Arch Manning for next season, and if Quinn Ewers wants to come back to college football, based on the reports of the NIL investments that we have in Chapel Hill, man, there would be a real opportunity to go be among the top bidders for Quinn Ewers. And for Quinn Ewers, that would be a great spot for you as well to try to raise your status, because what would look better in an NFL draft evaluation than to hear that you were successful with Bill Belichick and an NFL-focused coaching staff?
So you're saying that you should go hunting for a quarterback among the playoff teams, but this is Bill Belichick after all. Tom Brady, you know, I mean, he was 199. I did look this up, Chip. The player who is 199 in our portal rankings right now on 247sports.com, Jacob Zeno, who is a quarterback from UAB, but he's currently committed to Texas A&M. But we know commitments, they can change. You could flip for Bill Belichick. We don't know. Chip Patterson, thank you so much for giving the great advice to Bill Belichick, and you can check out more of his work on the Cover 3 podcast. podcast. The whole gang has you covered on all things college football. Watch now by scanning the QR code and listen wherever you get your podcasts. A quieter college football Saturday, but it doesn't get bigger than the standalone game between Army and Navy. It's notorious for its pageantry, its patriotism, and its unders. Let's bet this game next. Could we be in for an offensive explosion in this edition of the Army-Navy game? I mean, check this out. Both teams have seen huge growth in points per game this season compared to last. For Navy, 14.6 points, and Army has added 12.6, both top 10 in points per game increase in FBS. But this is where we pour some cold water on it. Do not bet the over in this game. Come on, the under is 16-1-1 in the past 18 meetings between Army and Navy. The over last hit in overtime in 2022, and then last year it was a push, so maybe we're trending in that direction. I don't know. Let's bring in a Service Academy under expert. Tom Fornelli is here to help us bet this game. We'll start with you because, as I mentioned, this is your bread and butter, betting these Service Academy unders. But Tom, how much do you factor in this offensive explosion for both of these teams this year?
Not at all.
Okay.
I mean, when you look at both of these teams, true, they have been better offensively. It's just when you're an option team going against teams that don't run option offenses and don't see them very often, you have an advantage. But when it comes to these two, they see it every single day in practice. They know everything that the other team is going to do. They know how to handle it, and it impacts the offense's ability to put points on the board. And I think that, you know, that trend we showed goes back to 2014. It actually goes back way further than that. If we go all the way back to 2005, the under is 47-11-1 in games between service academies, and it has come down this week. It is now down to 39.5, and I understand that's a little bit scary, but I don't care. It's always a game with few possessions. The touchdown drives usually take 8 or 9 minutes off the clock. Even the 3-and-outs tend to take 3 to 4 minutes off the clock. There are limited possessions, which means limited chances to score. They're always low-scoring games. Give me the under 39.5.
I am 100% lockstep agreement with you on this one. You mentioned a lot of the reasons why. You know, the number, I saw some books had it yesterday at like 38.5. It was coming. Now it's kind of settled in around that 39.5 number. It does feel pretty low. If you're kind of nervous about it, you can take the risk of potentially waiting and playing a live bet and seeing if you can get it to creep up a little bit if there's a touchdown early. The problem with that is I think I remember a Cover 3 text thread last year or in years past during this Army-Navy game where the live under, the live total gets to about 30.5 or 27.5 when you look up at halftime and all of a sudden it's 6-3 and they're like, oh shoot, I could have had 39.5. So you're probably best off just taking the under, looking at the trends and saying, you know what, these teams are going to lay it all on the line. The defenses are very prepared to stop these option offenses. So I am with you on the under as well.
10 straight meetings have gone under 40 points. And you mentioned it, Tom, the total in this one, 39.5. So if you want to bet the over, do it at your own risk. We'll see how this one goes. Tom, thank you so much. We could not have done this segment without you. We appreciate it. But it is time for us to say goodbye because it is time to watch America's game. You can watch Army and Navy live on CBS right now.